The massive research vessel Explorer hung in orbit around HD 778 bits, its sensors working overtime to analyze the strange planet below. Captain Mike stood at the bridge's main window, his weathered face reflecting both excitement and concern as he studied the giant world beneath them. "Sir, we're picking up artificial signals from the upper atmosphere," reported Bill, the communications officer. His fingers danced across the holographic display, trying to clean up the transmission. "It's definitely not natural." The planet below them was a beast, 2.8 times larger than Earth, with more than 3 times the gravity. Its thick, layered atmosphere swirled with storms in shades of purple and blue. According to their instruments, the surface pressure was crushing, yet something down there was broadcasting. "Can you clean it up?" Mike asked, walking over to Bill's station. "Working on it, sir." "Wait, there's a pattern. It's a greeting message. Multiple languages, repeating in sequence." The bridge crew gathered around as the message became clearer. Through the static, they heard, "Welcome, travelers. You have entered Herald space. Please maintain your current orbit and await contact." Within hours, a sleek vessel rose from the planet's upper atmosphere. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, long and thin, with what looked like vast sail-like structures that caught the local star's light. As it approached, the human crew got their first look at the Heralds. The aliens were perfectly adapted for their high-atmosphere home. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, they had thin, almost fragile-looking bodies with multiple joints in their limbs. Their skin was semi-transparent, showing internal organs that pulsed with a soft blue light. The first meeting happened on the Explorer. The Herald representative, who called himself Green, moved with obvious discomfort in the human ship's artificial gravity. "We apologize for the gravity settings," Mike said. "We can lower them if you'd like." Green's large, compound eyes blinked in surprise. You maintain Earth normal gravity on your ship. How do you even move?" "It's what we're used to," Mike explained. "Our world has about a third of your planet's gravity, but it's still substantial compared to many habitable worlds." The Herald made a gesture that might have been disbelief. "And you intend to study our world?" "That's right. We have a team ready to begin surface surveys." "Impossible," Green interrupted, his body swaying in agitation. "No species can survive on the surface. We ourselves evolved in the upper atmosphere and haven't set foot on the ground for thousands of years. The gravity would crush you instantly." Mike smiled and pressed a button on his desk. A hologram appeared, showing footage from their initial probe landing. In it, Tom, their lead geologist, stepped out onto HD 778 bits' surface wearing a reinforced environment suit. He moved slowly but steadily, collecting samples and setting up equipment. Green's reaction was dramatic. His skin became almost completely transparent, and the lights within his body flickered rapidly. This cannot be real. Even with mechanical assistance, the strain would be too great. "The suit helps," Mike explained, "but humans are naturally adapted to handle high-gravity environments. We evolved as persistence hunters on a relatively high-gravity world. Our bones are dense, our muscles are compact, and our endurance is remarkable by galactic standards. But why would you even want to go down there?" Mike's expression turned serious. "Because that's what humans do. We explore, we adapt, we overcome, and we believe your planet's surface holds secrets that could benefit both our species." The meeting continued for several hours, with the Heralds gradually moving from disbelief to cautious curiosity. By the end, they had agreed to allow a human expedition to the surface, though they clearly still doubted its chances of success. As Green prepared to return to his ship, he turned to Mike one last time. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have something to learn from your species after all. We saw your dense bodies and powerful muscles as signs of primitive evolution. Now I wonder if we were wrong." Mike watched the Herald ship depart, its light sails glimmering in the alien sun. Tomorrow, they would begin preparations for the surface expedition. Whatever secrets lay beneath those purple clouds, humanity was ready to face them. The real question wasn't how humans could survive on such a gigantic planet. The question was, what would they discover once they did? Tom wiped sweat from his forehead as he bent down to collect another rock sample. Even with his powered suit helping to offset HD 778 bits' crushing gravity, every movement required careful thought and effort. The purple clouds above swirled endlessly, creating an alien twilight on the rocky surface. Ray, his herald guide, floated 10 meters above in a specially designed gravity-neutral pod. The tall, spindly alien watched with a mixture of fear and fascination as Tom worked on the surface below. "I still cannot understand how your bones don't snap," Ray said through the comm system. "Even in that suit, you're supporting more than 3 times the weight your species evolved to handle." Tom straightened up slowly, carefully securing the sample in his collection bag. "The suit only helps a little," he explained. "Most of this is just normal human capability. We're tougher than we look." To demonstrate, Tom jumped slightly, letting the planet's gravity pull him back down. The ground shook with his landing. Ray's pod drifted backward instinctively. "Impossible," Ray whispered. "Our scientists studied surface exploration for centuries. Even with our best technology, we couldn't survive down there for more than a few minutes." "The strain. That's because you evolved for the upper atmosphere," Tom said, starting to walk toward another interesting rock formation. "Your bodies are perfect for life up there. Lightweight, flexible, able to process thin air. Humans evolved differently." As if to prove his point, Tom began explaining while continuing his work. "On Earth, our ancestors were persistence hunters. We chased prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. It meant we needed dense bones to support repeated impact, strong muscles for endurance, and efficient cooling through sweat." Ray's pod followed along, its sensors constantly monitoring Tom's vital signs. "But surely there are limits. You cannot keep this up indefinitely." Tom laughed. "Watch me. I've got another 6 hours in my shift, and I plan to use every minute. These geological samples are incredible. Your planet's surface hasn't been studied in thousands of years." As they worked, Ray began to notice something remarkable. While Tom moved slower than a human would on Earth, he maintained a steady pace. Every hour, he took his readings, collected samples, and made observations. The Herald had expected the human to tire quickly, but Tom showed no signs of stopping. "You said humans sweat to cool down," Ray noted, watching droplets float off Tom's face inside his helmet. "Your species deliberately loses water to maintain function." "Exactly," Tom said, setting up a small drilling unit. "It's one of our biggest advantages. Most species either evolved with internal cooling or need external help. We carry our own cooling system everywhere we go." The drill bit into the planet's surface, bringing up core samples that hadn't seen light in millions of years. Ray watched in amazement as Tom handled the heavy equipment with practiced ease. "Our histories tell of a time when we lived on the surface," Ray said quietly. "Before we learned to harvest the power of the light winds, before we built our floating cities. We thought those days were lost forever." Tom stored the core samples carefully. "Nothing's ever truly lost, Ray. That's another human trait. We don't give up easily. If something seems impossible, we take it as a challenge." As the local star began to set, casting deep purple shadows across the landscape, Tom finished packing up his equipment. He had collected more geological data in one day than the Heralds had gathered in generations. "I think I understand now," Ray said as they prepared to return to the research base. "What we saw as primitive features, your dense bones, heavy muscles, and inefficient cooling, are actually sophisticated adaptations." Tom nodded inside his helmet. "Every species has its strengths. You Heralds master the skies in ways we never could. We humans, we're built to endure, to persist, to overcome. That's how we survived on Earth, and that's how we'll help here." As they headed back, Ray watched the human walking steadily below his pod. Perhaps, he thought, these strange surface dwellers were exactly what his people needed to reclaim their own world's secrets. The storm came without warning. In the upper atmosphere of HD 778 bits, where the Herald's floating cities drifted peacefully among the purple clouds, the first signs of trouble appeared as subtle pressure changes. Tom was in the human research base when the emergency alarms started blaring. Through the reinforced windows, he watched as massive storm clouds gathered, their color shifting from purple to an angry dark red. "All surface personnel, return to base immediately," crackled the voice of Captain Mike over the communication system. "We're tracking a massive atmospheric disturbance." Above them, in the Herald city of Windhome, panic was spreading. Ray's voice came through on the emergency channel, his usually calm tone filled with fear. "Tom, are you receiving this? We have a serious problem." "I'm here, Ray. What's happening up there?" "The atmospheric processors. They're failing. Without them, our cities will lose altitude control. We've never seen a storm this powerful before." Tom rushed to the base's main control room, where other human researchers were gathering around display screens. The readings were off the charts. Wind speeds in the upper atmosphere were reaching levels that could tear the floating cities apart. "The processors," Ray continued, his voice breaking with static. "They're connected to power cores on the surface. We built them generations ago, before we retreated to the skies. Without them, we can't maintain stability." Captain Mike's hologram appeared in the control room. "We're getting reports from all Herald cities. Their technology depends on those surface power cores, but none of them can reach them in this gravity." Tom looked at the storm data, then at the map showing the locations of the ancient power cores. "How long do they have?" 3 hours, Ray answered. "Maybe less. After that, the cities will begin to fall." The control room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The Heralds couldn't survive the crushing gravity of the surface. If their cities fell, it would mean the end of their entire civilization. "Send me the power core locations," Tom said firmly. "We can reach them." "It's not that simple," Ray protested. "The cores need specific maintenance sequences. Our ancestors built them, but we've lost so much of that knowledge." "Then send us everything you have," Tom replied. "Your historical records, technical diagrams, anything. We'll figure it out. That's what humans do." Captain Mike nodded. "Tom's right. We're launching an emergency response team. All surface qualified personnel, prepare for immediate deployment." The next 30 minutes were a blur of activity. The human base, designed for research, transformed into an emergency command center. Teams of engineers studied the old Herald technical documents, while others prepared specialized equipment. "The nearest power core is 15 kilometers from here," Tom explained to his team. "We'll split into 3 groups to reach all critical locations. The storm's getting worse. We'll be fighting heavy winds even at surface level." Ray's voice came through again. "Tom, what you're attempting, the pressure at those depths, will be intense, we know." Tom finished for him. "But we can handle it. Your ancestors built these cores. We can repair them." Through the windows, they could see the storm growing. Lightning flashed between the clouds, illuminating the darkness with bursts of alien electricity. Above them, the great floating cities of the Heralds began to drift uncertainly in the violent winds. "Teams, move out," Captain Mike ordered. "We have less than 3 hours to save an entire civilization." Tom checked his reinforced environment suit one last time. Around him, other humans were doing the same, preparing to step out into the crushing gravity and face the storm. They moved slower than they would on Earth, but they moved with purpose and determination. "Ray," Tom called over the comm as his team prepared to leave the base. "Keep your people safe up there. We'll handle things down here." As the surface teams deployed into the storm, the Heralds watched from their drifting cities in amazement. The same gravity that had driven them from the surface generations ago was barely slowing these strange, sturdy aliens from Earth. The race against time had begun. The storm howled around them as Tom's team fought their way through the heavy winds. Even with their powered suits, each step was a battle against HD 778 bits' crushing gravity. 3 other teams had spread out in different directions, each heading for a different power core. Distance to target. Tom asked through his comm system, his breath heavy with effort. 10 kilometers, Jack replied, checking the navigation display on his wrist. The engineer was carrying crucial repair equipment in a reinforced backpack. The storm's getting worse. Look at those clouds. Above them, the sky had turned almost black. Lightning flashed between the clouds, illuminating the rocky landscape in brief, purple bursts. Through gaps in the storm, they could see the herald cities swaying dangerously. Ray's voice crackled through their comms. Tom, we've decoded more of the ancient maintenance files. The power cores. They're more complicated than we thought. They need synchronized activation. Explain, Tom said, helping Jack over a particularly rough patch of terrain. All cores must be restarted within 5 minutes of each other, or the system will fail completely. Our ancestors built this failsafe to prevent unauthorized use. Mark, the team's technical expert, swore under his breath. That's going to be tight. We got teams spread across 20 kilometers. We'll make it work, Tom said firmly. Ray, send us the startup sequences. All teams, confirm you're receiving the data. One by one, the other teams acknowledge. Each group was led by a human geologist who understood the planet's surface, accompanied by engineers carrying repair equipment. They had trained for high-gravity operations, but never under these conditions. Herald City wind home losing altitude. Came an automated alert. Estimated time to critical failure. 45 minutes. Tom pushed forward faster, his muscles straining against the gravity. The powered suit whined with the effort, but held together. Behind him, Jack and Mark maintained pace, though he could hear their labored breathing. I see something, Mark called out suddenly. Half a kilometer ahead, those rock formations. They're not natural. Through the gloom, they could make out geometric shapes rising from the ground. As they got closer, they saw what looked like an ancient herald facility, half buried in the planet's surface. This is it, Tom confirmed, checking his readings. The power core is inside. Teams 2 and 3, what's your status? Team 2 at location, beginning entry sequence. Team 3, 5 minutes from target. Team 4, we've reached the core. They approached the facility's entrance, a massive door covered in herald script. While Jack worked on decoding the lock, Tom received another transmission from above. Tom. Ray's voice was shaking. The city's stabilizers are failing. We're evacuating the outer rings, but there are thousands who can't reach the emergency shelters in time. We're almost there, Ray. Just hold on. The door finally opened with a grinding sound that seemed to shake the whole facility. Inside, emergency lights still functioned, casting an eerie blue glow through the corridors. This is amazing, Mark whispered, scanning the walls. Their surface technology. It's incredibly advanced. Focus, Tom reminded him. We need to find the core controls. Jack, start unpacking that equipment. All teams, report ready status. As the other teams called in their readiness, Tom's group reached the central chamber. A massive cylindrical structure dominated the room, covered in dark panels and connection points. Okay, we've got the startup sequence, Jack said, connecting their equipment to the ancient herald technology. But these power readings, the surge required for synchronization could overload our suits. Tom looked at his team, then at the readings from the cities above. They were running out of time. In the distance, thunder rolled across the surface of HD 778 bits, as if the planet itself was challenging them. We didn't come this far to give up, Tom said, starting the connection sequence. All teams, prepare for synchronized restart on my mark. Let's show the heralds what humans can do. Above them, the storm raged on, and three great cities hung in the balance, waiting to see if these strange surface dwellers could save them where their own people could not. All teams, final check. Tom's voice crackled through the comm system. Inside the ancient herald facility, the power core hummed with growing energy. Outside, the storm had reached its peak, battering the surface with unprecedented fury. Team 2, ready. Team 3, standing by. Team 4, ready to initiate. Jack's fingers flew across the control panel they'd connected to the core. Power systems primed. We'll have one shot at this, if the surge doesn't sync perfectly. It will, Tom said firmly. Above them, Herald City Windhome was now less than a kilometer from critical altitude. Two other cities weren't far behind. Millions of lives hung in the balance. Tom. Ray's panicked voice cut through the static. The city's main stabilizers are gone. We're dropping too fast. Starting countdown, Tom announced. Synchronize on my mark. 10 seconds. The ancient machinery around them vibrated, building to a crescendo. In 4 identical chambers spread across the planet's surface, human teams stood ready, their powered suits straining against the crushing gravity. 5 seconds. Mark monitored their suit readings. Power levels critical. The surge might overload our systems. 3, 2, 1. Mark. In perfect synchronization, 4 teams activated their power cores. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Energy coursed through long dormant systems, and the ground itself seemed to shake with awakening power. The surge hit their suits like a physical blow. Warning alerts screamed in their helmets as power systems flickered. Tom felt the suit's assistance failing, the full weight of HFY 778 bits' gravity pressing down on him. Hold position, he shouted, though every muscle screamed in protest. Around him, Jack and Mark fought to stay standing as their suits struggled to recover. Above, Ray watched in awe as lines of power lit up across the planet's surface, a grid that hadn't functioned in generations. The falling cities shuddered, then slowly, impossibly, began to stabilize. It's working. Ray's voice was filled with disbelief. The atmospheric processors. They're coming back online. But in the surface facility, the human teams were facing a new crisis. The power surge had damaged their suits' cooling systems. The temperature inside began to rise dangerously. Teams, report status. Tom managed through gritted teeth. Each breath was a battle now. Team 2, suit systems critical. Team 3, losing power but holding. Team 4, we need extraction. The ancient herald machines continued their startup sequence, drawing more power with each passing moment. Inside their failing suits, the humans refused to move, knowing any interruption could doom the cities above. Just a little longer, Tom gasped. Sweat poured down his face as the suit's temperature continued to rise. The gravity felt like it would crush them at any moment. Then suddenly, the power cores stabilized. The violent humming settled into a steady rhythm. Above them, the herald cities stopped their descent completely. Power grid stable, Jack announced, his voice weak but triumphant. The processors are fully online. All teams, fall back to extraction points, Captain Mike ordered. Medical units are inbound. Tom's team stumbled out of the facility, their suits barely functioning. The storm above had begun to calm, the angry red clouds returning to their normal purple hue. Through gaps in the clouds, they could see the herald cities shining once again, their lights steady and strong. Ray's voice came through clearer now, filled with emotion. You did it. You actually did it. Our scientists said it was impossible to work in that gravity, but you. Impossible, Tom said, managing a weak laugh as he waited for the rescue shuttle, is just another word for hasn't been done by humans yet. As medical teams rushed to help the exhausted surface crews, the heralds watched from their now stable cities with newfound respect. These humans had done more than save their civilization. They had proven that the surface of their world wasn't as unreachable as they had thought. The question was no longer whether humans could survive on their gigantic planet. The question was, what else might they achieve together? 1 week after the Great Storm, Tom stood in the ancient Herald facility, now properly lit and humming with restored power. The damaged environment suits had been replaced with newer models, specifically designed for HD 778 bits' crushing gravity. "These markings are incredible," he said, studying the walls while Ray's observation pod hovered nearby. "Your ancestors didn't just survive down here. They thrived." The facility had become a treasure trove of Herald history. Every day brought new discoveries as human teams worked alongside Herald researchers, who now watched from their gravity-neutral pods with growing curiosity rather than fear. "Here's another database terminal," Jack called from down the corridor. The engineer had been working for days to restore the ancient computer systems. "This one seems to be about surface agriculture." Ray's pod drifted closer to the terminal, his transparent form glowing with excitement. "Agriculture. On the surface. But the gravity. Look at these designs," Jack said, projecting the ancient diagrams into the air. "Your ancestors built terraced farms into the mountainsides. They used the gravity to create natural irrigation systems. It's brilliant." Tom walked over to examine the diagrams, his movements careful but confident under the extreme gravity. The new suit helped, but after a week of surface operations, his body had begun adapting to the conditions. "That's why they built the power cores," Mark added, joining them from another chamber. The whole surface was connected by underground transport tubes. The cores didn't just power the cities, they maintained an entire civilization down here. Ray's glow dimmed slightly. "But why did we abandon it? Our histories speak of a great migration to the skies, but never explain why." As if answering his question, a distant rumble shook the facility. The humans instinctively braced themselves, while Ray's pod automatically adjusted its position. "That's why," Tom said, checking his readings. "Your planet's geological activity. It's not just the storms. The entire surface is incredibly active. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. The surface cities must have been constantly threatened," Jack continued, pulling up more historical data. "So your ancestors developed the atmospheric processors and floating cities as a survival strategy. But they never meant for you to abandon the surface completely," Mark added. "Look at these maintenance schedules, the backup systems. Everything was designed to be maintained from above and below." Ray processed this information silently. Around them, the ancient facility continued its work, power flowing through systems that had waited generations to be reactivated. "Our bodies adapted," he said finally. "Over thousands of years in the upper atmosphere, we became what we are now. We thought it was evolution's plan." Tom shook his head. "Evolution doesn't plan. It adapts. We humans got stronger because our world demanded it. You became lighter because yours did. Neither is better. They're just different solutions to different problems." A message came through their comm systems. Captain Mike's voice. "Surface teams, we're picking up some interesting readings from the planet's southern hemisphere. Looks like another facility, much bigger than this one." "The Central Archive," Ray whispered, his glow brightening suddenly. "It was believed lost, but if it survived, then we'll find it," Tom said confidently. "That's why we're here, not just to help in emergencies, but to help recover what was lost." As they prepared to investigate the new discovery, more Herald pods descended from the cities above. Each carried scientists and historians, eager to reclaim their heritage. The humans moved among them, their sturdy forms a stark contrast to the Herald's ethereal grace. "You know," Ray said, watching Tom lift a heavy piece of equipment with ease, "when you first arrived, we thought your physical strength was a sign of primitive development. Now I understand. You're not primitive at all. You're precisely what you need to be." Tom smiled inside his helmet. "And so are you, Ray. So are you. Now, let's go find that archive." The facility's doors opened to the purple twilight of HD 778 bits' surface, where humans and heralds prepared to uncover more secrets together, each species bringing its own strengths to the task ahead. 3 months after the Great Storm, the landscape of HD 778 bits had changed dramatically. At the base of Windhome City, a new structure rose from the planet's surface, the first Joint Human Herald Research Center. Its reinforced walls stood strong against the crushing gravity, while its upper levels connected seamlessly to the floating city above. Tom stood at the center's main window, watching teams of humans and heralds working together outside. The sight still amazed him. Human researchers in their powered suits walking alongside herald gravity pods, each species perfectly adapted to their preferred environment. The Central Archive restoration is ahead of schedule, Ray announced, his pod gliding into the room. We've recovered another 1,000 historical documents this week alone. Any interesting discoveries? Tom asked, turning from the window. Actually, yes. Ray's form glowed brighter with excitement. We found designs for hybrid structures, buildings that could function both on the surface and in the atmosphere. Our ancestors were planning to maintain connections between both worlds. Captain Mike entered the room, followed by Blue, the Herald City leader. They had just returned from a meeting with the Herald High Council. Good news, Mike announced. The Council has approved the expansion project. We'll be building 3 more research centers like this one. Blue's transparent form rippled with joy. Our people are excited. For the first time in generations, young heralds are asking to train for surface operations. They want to work alongside humans. Speaking of training, Tom said, how are the new hybrid suits coming along? Ray activated a holographic display, showing their latest project. We've combined Herald gravity nullifying technology with human-powered suit designs. It allows heralds to work on the surface for short periods, while helping humans move more easily in our gravity. And the surface transport network? Mike asked. The old tunnel systems are 60% restored, Tom replied. Once they're fully operational, we'll have connecting routes between all major sites. The ancient Herald engineers really thought of everything. Blue drifted closer to the window. For thousands of years, we thought we had evolved beyond needing the surface. We saw our adaptation to the upper atmosphere as progress. Now I understand. We didn't evolve beyond the surface, we just evolved away from it. And in doing so, we lost half of our world. But you gained another, Mike pointed out. Your floating cities are engineering marvels. Now you have both. A group of young heralds flew past the window, their pods keeping pace with walking humans below. They were part of the new exchange program, heralds learning about surface operations while humans studied atmospheric navigation. The Council has officially updated our historical records, Blue announced. We no longer refer to the surface adaptation of humans as primitive. Instead, it's being called environmental specialization. Tom laughed. That's a fancy way of saying we're built tough. But accurate, Ray added. Just as we specialize for the skies, you specialized for challenging gravity environments. Together, we can operate in both. An alert sounded. Another storm was approaching. But this time, there was no panic. The restored power grid hummed efficiently, atmospheric processors worked at full capacity, and surface facilities were securely reinforced. Storm protocols initiated, announced the automated system. All surface teams please verify safety measures. They watched as humans and heralds moved smoothly through their emergency procedures, each species helping the other. Surface teams checked their equipment while herald pods monitored from above. You know, Tom said, when we first arrived, everyone kept asking how humans could survive on such a gigantic planet. But that was never the right question. Oh, Blue's form shifted curiously. What was the right question? The question wasn't how we could survive here, Tom replied, watching the purple storm clouds gather. The question was how we could help each other thrive here. And I think we found the answer. Outside, the storm rolled in across the massive planet's surface, But neither humans nor heralds feared it anymore. They had learned that the greatest challenges could be overcome when two species worked together, each bringing their own strengths to create something greater than either could achieve alone. On HD 778 bits, the planet that had once seemed too hostile for any surface life, a new civilization was taking shape, one that reached from the rocky ground to the purple clouds above, built on the combined strength of two very different species who had learned to see their differences as advantages. The end.